Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can everybody hear me clearly?
I can hear you. Hi,
Okay,
Tammy.
good. Hey, Barbara, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So we'll be starting in 2 minutes.
All right. I was starting to freak out. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't get the notice until like 2 minutes ago. I'm like, no. So like, looking through my emails, like, I know I have it here somewhere.
So I want to welcome everybody. Welcome Joyce, Sharon, Andrew Foster Legacy. I've been following you a lot. Thanks for coming. Hey, Romy. Hey, Kanithia, Bertha, and Gigi. Welcome. Welcome all. And we'll be starting in 1 minute.
Well, Tammy, how's the weather out there?
Oh, we're getting hit real hard. I think we're supposed to be getting like 15 to 18 inches
hmm
by tomorrow. So
You talking about rain or are you talking about snow?
snow,
Oh, well, you keep that out there.
right?
We're getting rain. We're getting bombarded with rain.
Yes, I was supposed to pick up my niece from school, but it's so bad out there. She's staying with one of her classmates. So, and I'll just get it tomorrow morning. But that's Chicago for you, so I'm used to it.
You can have that.
Well, welcome everyone to Black Grace Matter. I'm Tammy, Cinco for Travel Her. And I'm so glad to have my guest today, Barbara Barksdale. How are you, Barbara? And welcome to Black Grace Matter.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy, for the invite. I mean, delighted to have a moment to talk with you.
Thank you. I've been excited, been waiting for this interview for a long time. So we're going to get started. So I want to know if you can tell us about your background.
Oh my, I'm not really good at talking about myself so much. It's been a nice journey in life, I have to say. My background, as far as the cemetery is concerned, I've been working on the historic Midland Cemetery for over 30 years, trying to make sure that it is taken care of. I am a nurse by trade. I taught anatomy and physiology for a number of years. Before I got into this cemetery lady business. And I do a little, well, I do genealogy research and I help people to edit their books. And I tell you, it's been a really wonderful adventure to even do something like that because one of the books on Isaiah Dorman, in fact, who's out from the writers out in the Midwest, that is supposed to be made into a movie soon. I've done some research for a gentleman in Bulgaria. And that book came out about 2 years ago and it's all in Bulgarian, except for the bits that I did for him. And, you know, it's just a pleasure to be out here in the wonderful world of history and make sure that we're getting the information about all our people, all the people out there and documented and things like that. So my history, my background is very, very diverse, I have to say, but I'm known as the cemetery lady.
Okay. Can you talk about the history of
I'm
Township?
losing you a bit there.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, can you talk about the Swatara Township, the history?
Well, Swatara Township started right around the same time that Dauphin County, which we're in Dauphin County, and that was around 1795. And Swatara Township started about 30, 40 years after that. So as being incorporated. The The town is, well, it's not really a town. It is a large amount of land that has a lot of little towns within it, like Inhart, Bresler, Oberlin, Hummelstown, and various other little spots. And so the township was, lots of farmland, lots and lots of farmland. There's still quite a bit of farmland around here within the perimeters of Swatara Township. But within that township is also Midland Cemetery. And so it's right up against, the township is right up against the town that I live in, which is the borough of Stilton.
And that's in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so when Gigi Moore asked what city and where is it, what city, state?
Well, the biggest thing closest to us, other than Swatara Township, is the capital of Pennsylvania, which is Harrisburg. All right, and so we're on the southern end of Harrisburg. We're right up against it. So sometimes it's referred to the southern or south end, south side, or below the south side, because it becomes Swatara Township and then it bumps right on into Stilton.
Okay. Can you talk about the history of Midland Cemetery?
Midland Cemetery, from the information that I have been able to gather over the years, started around 1795. And what I have discovered, that the slaves that were within Swatara Township and in Harrisburg were buried there. Some of them were buried there. I found a nice amount of listing of all the, I should say all of the slaves, but quite a few of the slaves that were held in Swatara Township. And in fact, the town and actually where my home is at here in the borough of Stilton was at one time Swatara Township property. And so over the years, you know how to get the subdividing. So the cemetery is it just holds those bodies, and not only does it hold the bodies of the slaves, but it also holds the bodies of the people that was part of our first little bit of community. It holds the body of the United States colored troops, those who fought in the Civil War. And then after that, of course, the Buffalo Soldiers. We have the men from the Spanish American War, the World War I, II, the Korean War, and every little thing in between all that. The cemetery is just, and just lay some groundwork about it, the actual ground. The cemetery was very, very small at one time. Like I said, it holds the body of the slaves, and we have that area, as we named it now, as Ancestors Grove. And the wonderful thing about doing all this discovery of the people that's there is that the original part of the cemetery is on the other side of the road, and what's under the road, and what I'm saying is that, and we did have ground penetrating radar done there, is that the bodies are under the road, and then it gets to the main part of the cemetery, something like the pictures that I did send to you, that you will see a larger amount. It's like 3.5 acres of, property for the people that are deceased there, interred there. And so it does hold the bodies of the colored, Negro, Black, African-American people that was within the perimeters of Swatara Township, Harrisburg, Stilton, and those who came in and eventually died here. The wonderful thing about the cemetery over the years of restoring it and preserving it, and also doing a lot of the research, I also found that we do have one area that has bodies of a few Caucasians, whites, people buried there. And it's so crazy when you look at the cemetery and you're there, you're saying, okay, the headstones are facing towards the river, which is part of the heritage of ourselves. But the whites, and there's only about maybe 10 of them, their headstones are all facing towards what we consider the coal alley, and they're not facing in the same direction. And for whatever reason, but I'll have to tell you some stories on that too, if you have time.
Question wants to know what era was the 1700s, 1800s of the cemetery?
Okay, I'm having a hard time. Maybe it's my headphones. Okay, let me try this. So they want to know what?
The beginning of the era of the cemetery, was it the 1700s or 1800s?
It was around 1795 and 1797. That's what we have on as circa. I am right now presently working along with Dr. Stephen Berg and one of his students in order to get the cemetery listed on the National Register. And in doing so, and I've been working on this for a couple of years, in doing so, as far as trying to do the research, my one person, Jeannie Glacier, she's really good at digging into maps. And so she was able to find the maps all the way back to the beginning of the 1700s concerning the land, all right, before it was notated as Swatara Township. And so knowing how the land is laid out or was laid out at the time, and how it was divided out, and also knowing the laws of Pennsylvania as far as where Black people, colored people could be buried at, right where the cemetery is at is just at the end of the property lines. The law says that if you have a person who was enslaved or a person of color working for you, then you had the option of burying them at the end of your property, which they considered that the potter's field. And so right at the end of where Midland is almost a junction of several different properties. And that's where Midland is. And that's what happened as far as the time period, and looking at the records that we have from the 1700s, that's exactly where the cemetery, or how the cemetery got started in that time period. We don't know exactly the actual date of when the very first Black was buried there, but we can only surmise from the history, from the land records, the deed records, that this is where some of them were buried. And we in Pennsylvania, and I don't know about other states or areas, the thing is that we have, just like anybody else, we have a state, and the state is named Pennsylvania, and it's named after William Penn. William Penn has slaves, okay? And William Penn, this was considered Chester County. So we wanted records that goes back into the 1600s, 1700s. You got to go into the Chester County archives. And then it was divided, as most lands are nowadays, subdivided. It became Lancaster County. And so a lot of the records that Jeannie was able to actually pull up for me are in the Lancaster County Historical Society, or in their records somewhere. And that's how we can find some of the names of the slaves and some of the people, et cetera. And then in the late 1700s, it became Dauphin County. So then from that point forward, anything that we want to find out about the land or who's buried there, we need to go into the Dauphin County record. So it's not like a one-stop shop. It is, you got to be able to explore. You have to know exactly where you're going and who you're going to be digging up, basically. Okay.
Okay. I have a question. Someone has a question. What is the significance of the graves that face towards the river? Do you know?
Well, at one time, normally it was told to me, and what information I have found is that having the feet of the deceased towards the river or towards a body of water was allowing their spirits to travel back to where they came from. Mm-hmm. That's the short and sweet of it.
Okay. Okay. Do you know how many are at rest at Midland Cemetery, and do you have any ancestors at rest at that cemetery?
Okay. You have two questions there.
Yes.
Yes, I have ancestors there. And that's why I got started with that. And that was because my grandfather, who I never met, is buried there. All right. So this is another piece of the story. I was driving home with my son at the time. He was like 11 years old. It was winter, January. There was a lot of ice, a lot of snow, which you can keep out there in Chicago. Thank you very much. And we're trying to get home, and I'm going past the cemetery, which was an oddity to even go that way. But the police had diverted us off and said, hey, you can't go the normal way you normally go. So we went past the cemetery. And because of that, that became a life-changing moment for me, because I'm telling my son as we're creeping down the little mountain here is that, hey, look, my grandfather, your great-grandfather is buried over there. You know, I don't know exactly where, but, you know, because of the snow and because it was fall or winter rather, there was no leaves. And I was like, oh my God, there's a lot of headstones there, which I had never seen before because it was totally covered in weeds and trees and brush whenever my parents would take me up there. And so to see it with the snow laden upon it was like, wow. So that's how it got started. And that's how I got started with saying, okay, I'm going to go out here and try to figure out how we're going to clean up my grandfather before it starts to overgrow again. So that's how that bit of my life got started. As far as how many people are there, I was just looking at a map, as I have a retired Navy captain actually helping me to add more names to the maps, because I gave him a huge box of deeds that has the person's name on it, who's buried in which plot and whatever. And he's just updated that for me a couple of weeks ago, and we still have a lot more to do. And right now we have several thousand people buried at Midland. And unfortunately, some of them are buried on top of each other, and again, we don't know how many slaves or how many people are on the other side of the road or how many are under the road, but we can only go by not only those deeds that were, the deeds to each plot, or how many people are buried within those plots of names that we have, but it's also that research, that constant research of digging through archives and newspapers and oral history gathering and everything else that you could possibly pull together to get the names of the people that are buried there. And what I thought was starting off with just like a handful ended up being like, oh my God, there's a huge community of people that died here and had to be buried, and they're buried there. And Midland Cemetery started at that time period, but then Midland Cemetery started getting full at one point. And so then we have another cemetery that's down the road too that is designated, it was designated for people of color.
And is it still active?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it still an active cemetery?
Which one? Midland?
Midland.
No, the last burial at Midland was 1986, and it was done alongside the road. In fact, I was talking to someone today who I was showing them that where our cars were parked in the driveway of Midland, that I know that there's bodies under that particular part of the driveway, because that's the only area that they could physically get into over the years and alongside the road over the years, because all the weeds and the trees. When I started, and I just sent you that picture. Did you see the one with the little?
If you're done talking, I'm gonna bring up the PowerPoint so you can go through each photo.
Okay. Well, there's the one there with the little kids playing football, and I took the picture because of my son playing football, what they call it, little peewees, But I realized as I was creating this booklet for him, of pictures, I realized like, oh my God, there's Midland, but you can't tell it's Midland because it's under all the trees. It's like hundreds and hundreds of trees. And that's what I had to deal with. I didn't get to inherit the cemetery that, oh, I just got to pull up a headstone, or I guess have to weed whack or cut the grass or, wipe off a headstone. I didn't get to inherit that type of thing. What I inherited was a mess, a real mess. I'm talking about weeds, trees, brush, trash, garbage, you name it, it was there, along with the deer, and I want to say the antelope, but the foxes that run around up there, the little running around things on the ground and everything else, the snakes. I inherited all, along with a lot of headstones that was inside of trees, and headstones that down under the earth, and we still have a lot under the earth that we're constantly trying to find.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna bring up the PowerPoint.
Okay, so what you're seeing here is, and thank you. Of course, this is the historic Midland Cemetery. It's my baby. I have two children, by the way, and they're the ones who gave me the name of a cemetery lady. And when I got started, this is like the front part of the cemetery, other than the ancestors' grove. And all of this, from this point back, was nothing but weeds and trees and everything else. And as you see, that it's gotten cleaned up really nicely, and we created a little cross. And actually, I had inmates out there working for a number of years because I had to find help some kind of way to get it up to power where we can just maintain it by, cutting it and weed whacking and such like that. So let me see what you have. Let me see your next
To the
slide.
far right, is that a church?
No, actually, on the far right, you're talking about that somewhat white or brown
Yeah.
building.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, actually, that was an old barn. It used to have an old weather thing on the top of it, but since new owners came in, they took it off and downsized the big barn. It was like a work barn. It's country road. A lot of country road. Okay. And this is like that winter of going in there and saying, oh my God, there's graves in there. And this is like a before picture. It's full of graves, and had to wait until it melted down. But during the winter time is when I usually do all my research on the people that's buried there, or other assignments that I have to deal with, to get ready for Memorial Day and such like that. But unfortunately, in this picture, you're not going to be able to see any headstones because they're under the snow. But this will give you an idea of what I was dealing with when I came through that snowstorm to get home. And this is not the best shot, but just try to envision it to be really thick with trees and weeds and the poison. Oh my God, the poison that was up there was just outrageous.
How long did it take to clean up?
Well, when we first started, the area that you just saw where you have the sign that says Historic Midland Cemetery, we only did the top part because that's all the manpower that I could get. And then from the driveway that's further back beyond that white building that you saw, we did that the second year, and all the way back to the farm. There's a horse stable at the far end of the property. And so we did all that area. Actually, a tree fell down on top. Well, let's say when the tree fell, I was wrapped up around inside of the branches. By the grace of God, I didn't get killed, nor did I get hurt. But my hat came down over my ears because the branches just came down and just enveloped me. But we took down a lot of trees the first and the second year. And then on the third year, we ended up taking down most of the trees that was on the far left side of that first picture that you saw, all the way down to the woods. Now we still have quite a bit of woods that needs to be taken down, a lot of trees on the main, what I call the main part of the cemetery where you just saw the signage, but we also have trees over on the Ancestors Grove side that we're going to be targeting this year to remove, but it's up against the property of the high school. So we want to connect with them because I have another little Eagle Scout that wants to do his project. So he has selected to do that project. Right now, I have 2 Eagle Scouts that I'm working with this year. And that would be Eagle Scout number, I think, 5 and 6 for our project since I got started over 30 years ago. Okay. And this is the monument that we were trying so hard to get there so that we can say we've come this far by faith, What we have done with this, it says Midland Cemetery when it started. It basically is just thanking the people that had helped us up until this point. And this here, Swatara Township actually made the Midland Cemetery a historic site for Swatara Township. It is not a historic site designated by the state at this point, but hopefully it will be, along with the fact that with the National Register, hopefully this will all be done. But this was actually the site where we originally, there was, and I was told this, I never saw it, but it was a where they kept the shed for cleaning up the cemetery up into the 30s, 1930s. So what we did, and you see there's the markers all the way around this here particular thing indicating the different wars. And I also had some of them placed into the actual monument there below the sign. And what we did was we put them all around there because people were stealing them. You go to a flea market and you're finding these things at a flea market, which is totally, inappropriate. And that's, stealing from the dead, basically. So we made a decision, my board members and I made a decision to, put these around the monument so they wouldn't be stolen. They're down in cement, and we obviously decorated. But we also make sure that, and what the county has done now, they've given us new ones that are not metal. And they have them, they put them around at all of our veterans that could be identified by Headstone. And so now we have them at each and every one of the military veterans for, especially during Veterans Memorial Day. So basically this was, it must have been during Memorial Weekend, because I see there's a lot of cars there, and you know, we have the wreath there we usually try to do a wreath laying ceremony every Memorial Weekend. And we always have a program the Saturday of Memorial Day, only because we have another couple of cemeteries down the road that the dignitaries and everybody's trying to get to. And so that we don't have to fuss and fight with everybody else, and we can have a nice turnout. We always have ours on Saturday. In case you want to come, it's Saturday at 1 o'clock at the cemetery. And we have a great time honoring our veterans, and just having what we consider our picnic, you know, at the cemetery, like they used to do years and years ago, bring the food and stuff, and sit around and talk and try to reminisce for those elder folks that would come and visit their parents or somebody that they knew that was in the community. So we try to make it have it all prepared and ready.
Okay,
So
here's a question from DG Moore. If it's a designated historic site, will the state help to take care of the property?
no. With any designated historic site, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania does not do that. Okay. It's up to you. That, as far as I know, it is up to the individual stewards of the cemeteries, or any historic site is usually done by fundraising and things like that to take care of it, unless it is something that is under their general services. And only under general services will they take care of a historic site. Like, I'm part of the history detectives here, and we just had, you know, monuments done in one monument done in Harrisburg, and we had to take care of it for the first 2 years. We had to raise all the money for it. We had to make sure that it was maintained and cleaned or whatever. And then after 2 years, then the Commonwealth would take over, which they just actually did the beginning of this month. So it was a 2-year window. But as far as local, no, they don't do that. So we still have to raise money. We're still asking people to send donations so that we can buy the gas and, you know, weed whack and prepare for our summer months and get through until the next year, the next fall, I should say. Okay. Now this is actually on our memorial service, and as you see, these are Masonic brothers, and every year they come out, and it's a really nice group of men that come out to support what we're doing, and also to recognize the Masonic brothers that are buried there. And the ones who are not in the picture are actually down the road a bit, and they're the ones who actually put together our yearly festivities of food. They are down there cooking hot dogs and hamburgers, and having something for the vegetarians and everything else, and for the crowds that we get. And we get a lot of children too from different organizations. We always try to get those young people involved to come up and be a part of this. And, you know, because sometimes people, I don't know about you, but when I was a young girl, they would always say, you can't walk on the graves, or you can't point at a cemetery. And they made it so scary, like the goblins and the ghosts are going to jump up and get you, you know? So this way they're introduced to the history, and they can see that it is a place of rest and a place where they should respect and not vandalize or create havoc on it. So we have different groups that come up, and this is just one of them, the Masons from Harrisburg and Stilton. And this is the picture I was referring to earlier. Like I said, I was taking this picture because I'm a mother sitting in the stands, you know, like I'm not a football person, okay? So don't ask me about football. But I was there to support my son, and he is out there, probably he's sitting there on the bench. But I had to take the picture anyway, so that I could have a memory for him. And it wasn't until, like I said, that I was organizing pictures and trying to make sure that he had a book and his sister had a book. And as I'm sitting there looking at all these pictures, I'm thinking, oh my God, that's the house that's across the street from the cemetery. And lo and behold, that's the cemetery. So all those trees over there, all those trees,
Wow,
is when you look at other pictures, if you do a sky view from, from the sky, satellite view, you will see a lot of these trees are gone because we had to remove all these trees. And then we had to be very meticulous about it because the trees, we didn't want them falling down on headstones and crushing what headstones were above ground. And we didn't want to have problems where anybody got injured. And then we had to figure out how we're going to get all these trees out of there. So we enlisted the aid of the the conservationists, Pennsylvania conservations, which was part of the Commonwealth, and we also enlisted the aid of Swatara Township to help remove, the debris and everything, the trees, the tree trunks and stuff like that, and get that hauled away. And I have to give you this. It's like a sidebar here, because Swatara Township, at first, when I went to talk to them about the cemetery, who was the owners and who was doing what with the cemetery, and nobody could tell me anything other than I need to stay off the property. And I was like, well, why? My grandfather's buried there. And their thing was, well, no, if you go on the property, you're going to end up going to jail. I'm like, well, how can that be? So fortunately, I was able to present to Swatara Township at an open meeting, one of their council meetings. And fortunately, because it was live and it was being broadcast, and I told them exactly what was going on with the cemetery and what I was told, everybody kind of switched gears and said, oh, well, we're going to help you. So they've been helping ever since, for 30 years, and making sure any debris that I have is taken away. They supply us with a porta-john every year for up there. They're very helpful in even helping us to locate headstones. The police department will send the volunteers, and the different parts of Swatara Township people will come together and help. But this is what the cemetery looked like before. Unfortunately, I don't have a better view from air view at the time, but that's all Midland Cemetery under all those trees. And, what can I say? We've come a long way. We've come a long way, and we still have a distance to go. And this is, as I mentioned before, trying to get the kids up there and trying to get them involved. And this was actually a daycare, or I should say a summer school program that they had in the area. And that's Nancy and Mindy's that's standing next to me. And we're just going over the history with the children of who was there. We don't get into, well, there's children buried here, because I don't want to scare these kids, but just to give them some nice stories about like their local churches and Sunday school, and the soldiers that are buried there, and what we're doing, and the good things about the community at the time. And as you see, I'm dressed in what we consider period outfit, and I do that. I have many outfits and such like that, depending on the occasion and who I plan on speaking to is what I wear. So, and the kids like it. It relaxes them. And as you see, it must have been a warm day, because they're sitting there under the shaded tree, and then one boy has his hand up. And of course, I love it when they put their hands up, because they have questions, and hopefully I have an answer for them. And then usually we have a little treat. And we also show them, at the time we were showing them how to do rubbings of the headstones, but that's no longer an acceptable practice. So we have kind of taken that out of the scenario, but it gives them time to relax and ask questions. And something that they normally don't do is go to a cemetery. So, and we try to do that with the children. We also try to do it, connecting it with the school, which is, like I mentioned also earlier, that is connected to our ancestors' groves. So every year up until the pandemic happened, what I was doing, I was going into our history teacher, Mr. Czar's class. He would invite me every year for a number of years, and we would go in there, and sometimes I get another volunteer to go with me, and maybe she'll do one class and I'll do one class, because you're talking for almost 8 hours constantly. And so what happened was that we would go in, talk about the history, talk about Midland Cemetery, and that would be an all-day thing, because the classes rotate all throughout the day. And then the following week, we would bring all the children over together, and sometimes it could be up to 100 kids. And what we do, we break them down into groups of 20. And we use not only the history teacher, but it's the art teacher, the math teacher, the science teacher, and the English teacher. And so we would rotate them through. And the reason why we have those particular teachers is so that we can talk to them about the history, number one. We can talk about the science because of what the ground is made of, what the headstones are made of, and the type of materials, whether it was wood, like we have some old wood headstones that were actually placed in the Pennsylvania State Museum's magazine. They did a story on that. If it's of course, the history and the math, the science, of course, the math is about, what's the headstone saying, from the time of birth to the time of death. And of course, the history is everything in between. So we need those teachers too. And then, of course, the English teacher, because the kids are then asked to write up a little short story about what they learned. Maybe they picked out the Negro League baseball player. Maybe they picked out the United States colored troop person or whatever. So they can write a little short thing about that and hand it into their English teacher. And then the art teacher, because there is some artistry done on headstones. And, what did it look like? Was there a bird? Were there hands? Were there chains? What did they get to see? And so we try to combine all that. I have a syllabus for these kids, for the teachers rather. I meet with the teachers collectively, and then we try to pull it together so that they can, that the teachers learn something as well as the students. And we normally have it rotated out, and they also have lunch there. Fortunately, we've had really good days over the years, and they have lunch, and then we go through all the different things, and then they go back to their school. So
I have a question. Michelle Murphy has a question. What was the rubbing of the headstone about, and why is it no longer acceptable?
Well, when I first started, like I said, about 30 years ago, it was something that was told to me, and I still have those rubbings here, that and you did it with chalk, that you put a thin paper on it, not like almost like a parchment paper or an art piece of paper, a large paper, and then you would just rub. You're supposed to rub gently over that so that it will, how back in the day when you were a kid, you would rub on then, and then you slide your pencil over so that you could see, what the words were saying. And sometimes that was the only way to detect what was on the headstone, because sometimes they're very, very hard to read. That was okay back then. But then I started learning, and that was from going from, into different classes about, maintaining headstones and such like that, because of the type of materials that were being used for chalk or the colored chalks or whatever, that it could cause damage to the headstone. So that's why it became an unacceptable practice. Okay.
Question from Bertha Jackson.
Bertha Jackman, yes.
Jackman, I'm sorry. I cleaned my glasses. Sorry about that. Bertha's question is, could you explain the deeds for the plots?
Okay, yeah. I just pulled one a couple of weeks ago. Actually, this one is really, really neat. It's by oh my God, the Turner family. Okay. And they're near the front part of the cemetery, right off from the left side of the historic Midland Cemetery sign. And they're all like clustered together. The good thing about the deed, it actually shows from the Dunkels, who actually was part owners of the Midland Cemetery back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It shows that they sold this here plot of the plot to the Turner family. And in reading the plot, the deed, it actually told me exactly where the plot was located at. And it gave the row that if I take a look, and I'm sorry, I don't have that picture, but if you take a look at the plot plan, there is numbers on the side, which would be Coal Alley. And there's numbers listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. And then the plot number, which I think, let's say, is number 161 or 168. I'm not trying to deal with my memory here. But then it actually had another number there, and it said number 5. And so once I figured it out, it was like 160, 161, 162, 163, and then it jumped across the middle road there and it said 164, 165, 166. I was like, oh my God. So, this is how in reading a plot, it almost looked like a piece of property that you were purchasing. If you were buying a house, it looks just like that. Especially the ones from the 1800s and the early 1900s. But to be more precise, it gave the location of the plot, the size of, well, I shouldn't say the size like in inches, but, the plot number plus another digit and plus the row. And so you could not go wrong with having that piece of that deed, which is the only deed I actually have. And that was because Mrs. Etta Payne, it was her family, the Turners, and before she passed away, she gave me this here, this deed, which is a wonderful piece of history because it shows how she got it or how the family got it and exactly where the family is located at. It also gives me a better knowledge of who is in that plot. And that plot, when you look at it now, it doesn't look like it's very big. But Miss Etta, before she passed away, she got one headstone that has all the names of all the people that she knew of that are buried within that particular plot. Does that answer your question, Bertha? You're on mute, Bertha, so you can give me a thumbs up or not.
Okay. Can I ask?
Well, yes, Tammy, this is her show.
All right. I'm sorry. Well, it does, but it makes me have another question. When you say a deed, I'm hearing you saying there's a deed for each and every plot.
Yes.
Yes. And where would you find that information?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Miss Etta Payne gave me her copy, and there's other people that have called me over the years saying that they have a deed, whether they're calling me from California or whatever, and they're saying, can they bury their such and such person in the cemetery? And I tell them nice and kindly that I guess you can, but you're going to have to get a surveyor. You're going to have somebody who can dig it up. You're going to have to make sure there's nobody already in that particular piece of land that they're claiming is theirs and that they actually have the deed. I said, legally, I can't do anything for you because my business is not to bury. My business is to restore, preserve, and educate. And that's it, But no, you have to go to the families if hopefully they didn't chuck it out or throw it away. But like I said, by the grace of God, Miss Etta, she gave me that. And she also gave me a template for how to make the wooden headstones that she would have, or not headstones, but the wooden markers that she would have put on her family every year up until the time that she got this here granite one. So, yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just trying to think, where can I go to find something? Because it sounds like it's very organized and it's somewhere that people can find that information, like in the county or something.
Unfortunately, in Bertha, that's another thing. Another person asked me that question too a while ago. These deeds were not placed down at the county level. They are not anywhere notated other than in whatever books that the cemetery owners had at the time is where that information would be. Like I said, I had plots that the papers, I have a box of them and that the captain is working on them. And it just indicates the person's name and who it was sold to and what the number is. Okay. And it's just plain basic information. The actual deed itself has much more. It shows that it was sold from the Dunkel family / Allemans to the Turner family. It gives me precise information, which is huge help, but and it tells you the date and everything else. It's just awesome. It's all in calligraphy too, and so it's really neat. So it's a great piece of history, but unfortunately, not everybody has that information. They chuck it out or whatever. And also the record books that went along with that. One man from Swatara Township who had condemned the cemetery, and that's why they were saying they were going to put me in jail, because they had condemned the cemetery. They were going to remove the bodies and put houses there. He actually gave me a book that he was driving around in. He had it in the trunk of his car, and he passed away since too. But he gave me the book, which I actually took all the information I could out of it. And now I handed that book over to the State Museum. They have it because I don't want to keep things like that that could be used for any genealogist or whomever who's doing research. There's no sense of me hoarding it all up. And besides, I don't have the space for all that stuff, but the book actually was a payment book, for people that was purchasing plots, before they actually was given the deeds, they were given a payment, and then they would give them a slip and say, where the plot was located at. So there was a variety of ways of trying to find out who was who was owner of each plot. Unfortunately, on the deed, or not the deed, but on the map, it actually has notations of SG, the letters SG. And it took a little time and a couple of volunteers to help me, start typing this up and transcribing things. And the realization came to be that they're talking single grave. And unfortunately, they didn't give a number. They didn't give a plot number. And was that the potter's part of all this? I don't know. And when I'm looking back through my records, that we have transcribed thus far, it seems to be the single graves were for a lot of the babies that were buried there, the children, or maybe someone who just had no money, And so there's just so many pieces of the puzzle. Tammy, what do you have next for me?
Thank you.
Oh, this is our Rap Dixon. This is our Herbert Rap Dixon. He was our Negro League baseball player, and he had it's known on it's on the headstone that he had knocked the the baseball out of the stadium, Yankee Stadium. Okay, so he's known for that. And now that the Negro League can now be part of the National League, hopefully Rap Dixon will be put into the Hall of Fame in the near future. I know there is a person here locally who's really trying to do that. But what you have behind them is the children. This was Vision Quest at one time. I don't know if you ever heard of Vision Quest, but these young people, mostly of them, they're juveniles that were having some hardships and whatever, and they would send them off to the camp, to get learn some, I guess, give them some kind of respect, to learn respect of themselves and other people, and also to have some kind of leadership, and also hopefully they learn some skills while they were away. But every year I would have them bring their children, well, I call them children, but to have them come and visit the cemetery and be there for Memorial Day. I've had them in parades around Stilton and Swatara Township. I've had them bring in all the horses and all the gear, and we set them all up at the football field, and we have big learning days and teaching days. I'm all about trying to encourage people to learn something. And so this was a really nice occasion because we had Baltimore Orioles and Philadelphia Phillies and Pittsburgh Pirate people help us, to have this dedication of this new headstone for Rap Dixon. And if you see the elder man there, and I can't tell you what his name is right now, but he was one of the last of the original Negro League baseball players. And the kids were just loving it. Actually, it's two men there, but and they sent representatives from the Orioles, and I'm probably saying it like a cookie. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But anyway, it was a beautiful, beautiful occasion. We try to have different things like this at the cemetery to try to bring people together. It's not only about the United States Colored Troops. It is about all the people that came before them and all the people that came after them, and all the little tentacles that goes out to the community. So this was just a wonderful day to try to pull this together and just try to enjoy the history of Herbert Rap Dixon.
So when was the headstone installed?
What's that?
When was the headstone installed?
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Somewhere around 15, not quite 15 years ago. Not quite.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't ask me for an exact date because I can't remember.
Okay.
And here we have, this is obviously for Memorial Weekend. This is my friends, Joe Lee, Joe Beckton, Earl Weeks, God, Houston. Oh my goodness. I can't name them all, but these guys travel in from Philadelphia every year and help me. And, they talk to the community about the history. They, obviously they're shooting off the volleys at the end of our service and everything. And they're just tremendous people. They travel around and talk about the history everywhere they go. I met them first when I was traveling to Philadelphia. I got an invite down there by a woman who said, come on down and you can hand out flyers. So I packed up my kids. We went to Philadelphia, which is like an hour and 45 minutes away from my home. And we handed out flyers. That's when I first met them way back in the day, about 30 years ago. Well, put it this way, if you need a date, look up when President Clinton and Nelson Mandela was there, because I got to sit right there in the White House area, and that was already, blocked off. My son, my daughter somehow got away from us, and we got to meet them and hand out all kinds of great things. And ever since then, they've been coming back and forth, and we travel with them sometimes or meet up with them. Like when we did the unveiling for the United States Colored Troops Monument at 10th and U Street in the Shaw District of Washington, D.C. We have done inauguration parades. We have done just all kinds of functions, in the different parts of the state and outside of the state. So it's all about trying to teach and educate people. All right.
And that's it.
There we go. Okay. So
yeah. So I have a question. When did Friends of Midland become?
Tammy, you're going to have to talk towards your
Oh,
camera.
I'm sorry. When did Friends of Midland get ownership of the cemetery?
Well, we've been doing squatters' rights. We had done that for a long time. I had thought I had found relatives of some of the people that were part of the original organization years ago. They said, oh yeah, well, we're going to sign it over to you. And, you've been working it, and they didn't want to deal with it because they knew they would have to put time and effort and money into it and all that. And so what happened subsequently, nobody came forward. So we just kept working it. And actually, a little over a year and a half ago, we are legally the owners of the Midland Cemetery. What happened is the fact that I wasn't really worried about trying to become an owner. I just wanted to make sure that we had it taken care of, that it was restored and preserved, that it shouldn't be under all those trees and weeds. Our ancestors don't need to have weeds, trees, houses, macadam put over top of them. They don't deserve that. And I just wanted to make sure they were well taken care of. But ultimately, what was happening is the fact that I found that we could not get certain grants, because they always ask, well, who's the owner? Who owns the property? It's not owned by a church, even though we have the monumental AME Church, we have the Beulah Baptist Church, we have Mount Zion Baptist Church, we have First Baptist Church, we have the Second Baptist Church. Nobody was claiming ownership. They got bodies there, but nobody wanted to do the work. And so ultimately, thank God we have a good attorney that was able to walk through the process. And because of the Midland Cemetery and myself being so much out there, that the judge and everybody, they already know me, or they know of me. So when it hit his desk, and the attorney said, well, let's wait a couple months, I'm sure we'll hear back. Well, before the attorney could get back to his office, the judge had already signed it up and say, she got it, So, God is good. In his time, we get what we need. And when we need it, we got it. So that's what happened. So now, yes, we can apply for grants. And I don't, I'm the needy, not the greedy. Give me what I need. And I would rather have volunteers than to have the money, because the volunteers will get the work done, and then we can all say, hey, we did something good and positive. But, if we can't have that, we still got to buy gas. We still got to buy, equipment periodically. And we still have to be able to get the information out there. It's flyers and stamps and all that good stuff. So we need a little money for that, but I don't ask for a lot. I just ask for enough to get us through. So there's a lot of cemeteries like Midland out there. There's so many. With the Hallowed Grounds, the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds, which I am the chair of, and I have a lot of people like Bertha and Sheila and Sharon and Jeannie and and you name it, Dr. Berg and Brenda Barrett and Joe Beckton and Joe, it takes a whole, this is my village, this is my team of people, and God knows they put up with me. So they're helping me, and hopefully I'm helping them. And we're trying to make sure that all these cemeteries around the state, that they're able to do something similar. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't come into a nice, clean cemetery. I didn't come into where we're going to wipe off the headstones and go on about my business. I didn't come into that. I came into a royal mess. But by the grace of God, we are here. And so hopefully the rest of these stewards that's out there, or those people that want to be a steward, will be able to contact us, the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds. And if they need some help, they need some guidance, they need whatever we can do. Is not so much that we have money, because we don't have money to give to them, but we're asking for people to give donations for that, we can at least show them the way and let them know that it is only hard if you make it hard, and a lot of prayer and a lot of volunteers and some change along the way. Bring a tool. People used to drop off their old lawnmowers and put them on the side of the road next to the cemetery. And I had a man that would fix them up for me so we could use them for a season, things like that. It doesn't take a lot. It just takes persistence, and you got to keep going and just try to pull it together so people can help, and let's not have these cemeteries under the federal buildings or under the mailboxes or under the highways or being removed to be, pushed away or hidden away or under somebody's house or on somebody's backyard. Let's make sure that we are notating these things. We have the African American Cemetery Act that's being pushed out there by the Ohio Representative Sharon Brown. And it was started about, I think, 2019. And it was to try to make sure that all the cemeteries are located and documented and such like that. And so the thing is now it didn't get to pass through because it came up against the time element of politics. And so it's been kicked off again. And I'll send you that link later on if you don't already have it, so that people can sign up and support this bill, to make sure that we are collectively, not only in Pennsylvania, but around the entire country, to make sure that we are locating cemeteries, that we're documenting cemeteries, and that we're making sure that these places are not forgotten. So, we always talk about we want Black history, we want Black history. Well, you can get Black history. You just got to get out there and work for it, and then also teach it. And then when somebody puts it in your face, don't act like you don't want to hear it, So, it's just one of those things. So do you get any more questions for me right now?
There's a question from Joyce Terry. She says, are the Buffalo Soldier units?
The ones that were around the headstone there, they were from the group called Vision Quest, and they dressed them up as if they were what the Buffalo Soldier would have worn back in the 1800s. All right. There are some Buffalo Soldier reenactor groups around the United States. There's one close to Philly. There's in New York. There's definitely those out there in California, down in Texas, Arkansas, Arizona, that I've been in contact with over the years, Florida, and they have traveled up here with their horses, like I said, over the years, and we just have a good old time. I haven't had them here, of course, because of COVID, and because things have changed, and some of my guys have since passed on, but they would wear that type of outfit, and it's all about learning and what they had to do and how they got to become a Buffalo Soldier, whatever. So.
Okay, and Michelle Murphy made a comment. This makes me wonder how many more cemeteries like this there are out there needing this same effort.
There's a lot. I mean, there's some that are connected to churches, like Bertha has one that is right outside the back door of her church and is well maintained, and she's been very instrumental in trying to get things documented and a historic site, National Register, and things like that. But then there's cemeteries like mine that people don't know is there, or they don't know what to do. There's cemeteries that are still amongst the woods and the weeds and the trees, and people are driving past them and they have no idea where to get started, or they'll say, oh, there's a cemetery. They keep on going and nobody ever turns back to do anything about it. So there's quite a few. And unfortunately, especially with the cemeteries that are people of color, You know how that is. It's just like they always want somebody else's property, and they don't care who's up under that. You know, how many colleges and schools have you learned about over the last couple of years that are sitting on top of these cemeteries? Or how many houses have you heard about that's sitting on top of these cemeteries? I read about somebody just recently where they were doing some work in their basement and they came across some bones, you know? And so it's an old black cemetery there, you know? And, you know, I had a conversation earlier with a gentleman who I was saying, because he was saying, what did he say? About, oh, well, you know, they moved the bodies and they put them up at 6 and Her Street. I'm like, do you really believe that they moved all those color folks? Are you serious? And I said, you know what, you need to stop saying that, because of the fact that they were not moving those bodies up there because they had a whole lot of bodies, new bodies to put into that ground. And they didn't have that much ground. And those bodies right there, if you go and dig, you're going to find those bodies right up under the macadam. And that's why if you take a look at a newspaper clipping that was from the 1950s, you will see that the workman who was laying that sewer line came across all those bodies, because they never moved the bodies that they said they moved back in the 1800s to the new site. That wasn't happening. They're still there. You know, I don't know why people, don't let me get on my tangent here, but maybe Sheila Jones need to call me and tell me to chill out for a moment.
I mean, you're speaking truth.
Well, you know, what gets me is that, you know, I don't know if you see that show called The Doricos or something. The girl has like 14 babies, you know, she got single birth, triplets, and twins and quads and all that, you know, nice young lady. But she's out there saying, well, you know, they used to, they would put the maps in your hair so that they would know where to go. Don't you know that slave owner would have cut off that head if he known that the maps were up in somebody's cornrowed hair? Now, who is going to sit there and let that slave cornrow somebody's hair and put a map in it? Because you need to know what the map is supposed to be. That's not true. It's like, you know, when they were promoting about the quilts, okay? How many people had quilts laying up across the fence, and you're going to see that in the dark? You're going to see that quilt, and everybody down south knows about the quilts. Don't you think the slave owners would know about the quilts? Come on. I wish people would stop promoting things unless they know the facts, you know, and that's why you and everybody else, we need to put the facts out there. Right, Bertha? Give me a nod, Bertha. That's right. Okay. And so we need to make sure if we're going to do something, we need to do it right. Let's have the facts. Let's have the figures. Let's have that history. Let's have those, you know, that supportive original documentation. And don't believe in just what you're hearing just because you say, oh, yeah, well, I got the facts. I got that paper from let's say 1910. Oh no, let's go back to the earlier than 1910, you know, like San Juan Hill. Remember San Juan Hill? And they said, oh, I'll run up about some San Juan Hill. You know, who was that? Roosevelt? And only to find out that he was talking about the black people, the Buffalo soldiers that was going up San Juan Hill. But no, by the time that original information got out there, and everybody starts, you know, it's like telling the story in the classroom, and then you whisper it in somebody's ear until it gets to the 5th person down there. It's all changed by the time it gets to number 27. That's what was happening. So you can't even go with the primary information. You got to dig and you got to dig and you got to dig some more in order to get the truth. And that's what we need to do with our cemeteries, with our history, and with everything. Oh my.
Well, on that note, any last words before we end this amazing conversation?
Oh goodness. It must be these dreads. I need to pull my dreads. Anybody got any questions for me before I hush up? Tammy, all I can say is thank you so much for having me on your show. And I hope it reaches out. You know, are you going to be posting it, and then can we recirculate it again?
Yes, I will.
You know,
I do have a statement to make.
Who's that?
It's me, Gigi.
Hi, Gigi. I don't know you, but nice to hear your voice.
And don't you touch those dreads. They're beautiful.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Don't you touch them.
Okay.
My doctor told me to cut mine off. I said, get real.
You know, I just had 3 inches cut off. In fact, look, I don't know if you can see it, but I just had this cut off the other day.
Wow.
I said, well, it's 3 inches, you know, but
I might do the same. I might have 3 inches cut off of mine too, because they're down past my waistline now.
And that's where mine was, you know, I don't want to sit in the toilet and have it dipping, right?
Right. Well, my statement is, yeah, first of all, I commend you for doing all of that work that you did, you and the volunteers. That had to be a major, major undertaking. That is absolutely wonderful job that you did, and uh, for especially for remembering that these people were down there, because that brush that you showed
Mhm.
outside of the football field,
Yeah.
it's easy for the trees to overgrow, and you just forget about those people and
Mhm.
look at everything that you unearth after cleaning it up. So that is just phenomenal.
Thank
Um,
you.
phenomenal. I don't know what I was thinking that this presentation was gonna be like. Um, but when I saw that it was somebody who was caring about the cemeteries, I don't know if you've heard about that story that took place here in Chicago at Burr Oaks Cemetery. Did you hear?
No.
Did you hear
Mm-mm.
about that?
No. What
I'm a
happened?
member of Friends of Burr Oak Cemetery.
Say it
And
again, Tammy.
I'm a member of Friends of Burr Oak Cemetery because I'm in Chicago too.
Yes.
And we've been working on a few projects. So if you want to be a part of it, I can definitely send you the information because we're doing some things.
Interesting. We'll talk afterwards. Um, but I was so disgusted with what they had done there, and they had kind of double buried people in plots, and they kind of destroyed some of those graves, and I guess they were they had sold plots that were, they had taken graves. I think the ones that were people from the 1800s and before that were buried there, because they were far less visited graves, and resold plots, and was burying people on top of people, and it was just absolutely horrible what they had done. And I have a ton of family in Burr Oak,
Hmm.
and we had to, you know, go out there and make sure that our family wasn't destroyed. That was just heartbreaking. You know, so to see that you had done all that work, that is just amazing.
Thank you.
So I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to make a statement because, we had experienced as a family, some of our loved ones' graves being disturbed. And
Hmm.
that's something you don't want, just like you wanted to take your son to visit your grandfather's grave, even though you had never met him. You knew he was buried there. You
Hmm.
knew you could go and visit and lay flowers if you wanted to, but you know, that wasn't, these people took that away from families, because it is a lot of history that you can go back. My husband's family, they're from Alabama, and because blacks were not allowed to be buried in white
Hmm.
cemeteries, they had their own family cemetery.
Hmm.
And so we visited one when his grandmother died. She was 102. She did not want to be buried here in Illinois, so we had to take her back home to Alabama.
Hmm.
And we visited some of the family graves that they had there that were, still being maintained by the family. So it is important. They
Hmm.
might be gone, but we're not going to forget them.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gigi. And like I said, I'll definitely offline, I'll give you all that information because
Okay.
we're trying to do a few things. I have ancestors that are buried at Burr Oak, and some of our families was out there when that scandal happened. So I'll definitely get in contact with you so you can voice, we need to hear your voice so we can have more people to,
Absolutely.
more
Absolutely.
changes at the cemetery. So we're working on it. So I'll send you that information.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's great. And I'm going to share with you, Tammy, I'll send it to you by email. And that's the video that I just did with the National Cemetery Administration concerning the veterans, because a lot of our veterans don't have the right headstones. And this goes all the way back to Revolutionary War. So they're really targeting those that were Civil War and forward that don't have a headstone. So this video was released just about a week and a half ago. It is a national product. Yeah, I only have a little piece in it, and they picked the hottest day of the year to film me. So, I'm sweltering there, But anyway, I'm going to send it to you, so maybe you can pass it on to other people that may not know, especially people of color who did not know that they could get these headstones. They didn't know how the process was, and especially those in the 1800s who did not know how to read or write, and so they were like forgotten. And many of our guys, even from World War I and II, didn't have a headstone because apparently their people did not know either, or they just thought, nobody cares. So I'll send that information to you also. Okay.
Awesome. Well, I would like to thank everyone for coming out. I hope you found this meeting, this presentation informative. Barbara, thank you so much. I've been waiting for talking to you for when I emailed you a couple of months ago. Ms. Jackman, I would definitely like to do an interview with you and have you on to talk about, the cemetery that you maintain as well. So other than that, I'm working on a few other projects as far as interviewing more people. So Barbara, where can people follow you if they want to donate or support you? Can you provide your information?
Well, they can find me through midlandcemetery.com. They can find me through the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds.com. And they just have to Google my name. I'm out there some kind of way,
Okay.
You'll find me some kind of way. They can always call you and say, where is she?
Yeah, definitely. And then, like I said, I'm on Sankofa Travel Her, or you could just type in Tammy Gibson. And I'm on all Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My website is sankofatravelher.com. You can follow me, and I have a couple of people I plan to interview for the month of March. But this is my passion because our ancestors need to rest in peace and in dignity. And I want to have as many people as I can to tell their stories because Black race do matter. And I always ask people, when was the last time you checked on your ancestors? So thank you all. Have a
Tammy, Tammy. I just want everybody to know that they're invited to our annual Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds meeting that's in October. I'll be sending that information to you also so that they all can zoom in and learn more, because we're going to have wonderful speakers. We're going to have stewards who is going to be talking and everything else. And then you might find some other people you might want to interview from that too. Okay. The Gigi, take care of you. Charlene, take care of you. And Kenita and Andrew, it's just awesome. Joyce, nice.
Yes,
take care.
You.
Have a good day, folks.
You all. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.